This just in, wrestling an NBA player is difficult. Hi everyone, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self Protection. With me, my good friend and federal officer, former Mike Williver. I'm your host, John Correa.
Today's video comes to us from Los Angeles, California.
The Active Self Protection medical kit is sold fully stocked with everything you need for an excellent ankle medical kit. I wear this exact kit every single day, and I have used it multiple times at car wrecks to save lives. All profits that I get from this kit go to charity, and thank you to Mountain Man Medical for stocking it and making it available. Los Angeles cops have been called to the home of an NBA star because one of his girlfriend's friends was getting texts from her that they were arguing, fighting, that it had gotten physical. Then she stopped answering her phone, so her friend was worried about her safety, called into Los Angeles PD a domestic. And so, of course, they're going to show up to that. Let's listen in on the badge cams.
2843, alarm company notified. We'll call back with our info.
I'm going. Are you Jackson? Are you Jackson?
Yeah, what's up?
What's going on between you and your girl?
I always have a little argument. She was throwing some stuff at me. Clean it up.
Is she inside?
Who's in the house?
Yeah, my cousin Philip and
How many people are in the house?
How you doing?
Us three.
Just the three of you?
Yeah, she got pissed and me and him are sitting there cleaning up.
Everything's
all the
settled.
bases
It's good.
and stuff.
We have to talk to her.
Who's the doctor? Do you mind asking?
How do you guys stay out here, please?
Who called you guys?
What's that?
Who called you guys?
We just got notified, so.
Stay out here, sir.
Hang out here.
I'm not going to go inside my own house.
Not at the moment.
No.
I can't go inside my own house.
No,
Hey, sir.
Like right now?
You stay out here.
Nigga, it's my house, bro.
I understand that, but we're doing an investigation right now.
Shut up, fuck. This is my fucking house.
You're right, but right now we're doing an investigation.
Alright, do you have a warrant to go
You don't
in?
need a warrant.
Hey, stop.
You don't need a warrant.
No, you do need a warrant.
No, I don't.
She's gonna come to the door and see and tell them everything's okay.
You guys need a warrant to get in my house.
No, I don't.
I know my laws.
You're mistaken, sir. Step back,
You
please.
need a warrant to get in my house.
No, we don't.
You walk in the back door.
No.
You're gonna stay around here. You know what?
Get out my house, bro.
At the moment,
Come on, stop. Hey, stop. Jackson, please, bro. I'm begging you, please, bro. I'm begging you.
73. Don't have a backup rotation.
Don't take it.
No, don't touch him.
Hey, back up.
Everything's good.
Back up.
We're fine. We're gonna talk this out. Stop
hey.
touching him, man. That's my friend.
Stop grabbing me.
Don't grab him like that. Yeah.
at this moment, you're being detained.
Jackson, stop. Jackson, stop.
Put out a help call.
No, stop. Put it down.
Quit resisting.
I'm gonna call you back.
Step back.
Please.
I'm not tasting. Stop. Stop resisting. Or I'm gonna take you. Stop.
Hey, quit resisting.
Stop resisting.
Quit resisting.
Stop resisting. I'm gonna take you. Stop resisting. I'm gonna take you. Get your knee up.
Hey,
Stop.
yo,
Get your hands off me now.
this is so. Hey, give me your fucking badge numbers.
No!
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Y'all niggas can walk up a nigga's house and shoot him like that.
Stop resisting.
I am, bro.
This whole thing's on camera, guys.
Let
You
me
guys
get
did
the
not.
fuck
This
up.
whole thing was
Y'all get the fuck up. Y'all just paid me.
I have this whole thing on camera. Jackson said you can't go inside.
Y'all niggas don't want to talk to
Push
me.
him around and that's when
I want to see the warrant.
You just tackled Jackson.
Yo, what is the fucking warrant?
Stop.
Bro, get off my arm.
Nope.
Babe, call me. I need a warrant.
Stop resisting. Well, I'm gonna take you again. Stop resisting. Well, I'm gonna taste you again.
I am not moving. This nigga is spazzing.
Jackson, just shut up. Stop talking. Stop.
Me and you witnessed this story.
Yo, I came out to talk to y'all, and y'all go tackle me like this, bro.
Come on, this was not. Guys,
You wouldn't even tell me what the fuck
You
you
gonna
did
roll?
wrong.
You gonna roll to your?
this did not have to go this
You
far.
gonna roll to your
You didn't
side?
tell me what you did.
Are you gonna roll to your side?
I can't when you're
Roll, please, Jackson, roll, bro.
Roll.
Stop pulling my arm. Elbows bleeding. Stop. Stop right now.
You will break my arm, bro.
Stop with his arm like that, bro.
Yo, bro.
21-890. Bring your right arm to your back.
Bro.
Bring your right arm.
Just be quiet.
Nigga, this is my crib. What are y'all doing? I'm getting arrested for being in my own house. Look at all the blood and shit y'all doing to me, bro. What the fuck? Yo, hey, get all their bad charges. They all going to jail. Get their bad charges. Get their fucking bad charges. Get out.
I see your bag. I'm not moving anyway. Because you guys are doing it wrong right now. I see your bag. What's your bag?
You're supposed to perturb your sex.
What's your bag?
Perturb into.
I see it, right? What's your name?
Bro, protect into. Bruh, bro, get off my back like that. Niggas bleeding. I'm not gonna beat the shit out you. You lucky you have that gun, nigga. You gonna shoot me?
They did end up getting him into custody. I don't know what charges have been filed at this point against him. I can tell you that there is a categorical use of force investigation about one officer putting his knee on this man's neck. We're going to think about some significant lessons out of this one. Thankfully, nobody had any kind of permanent injuries, and there hasn't been any suspensions handed down by the NBA or anything either. We're going to really have to talk about the legal side as well as the tactical and technique side on this one. So I know that a lot of people are going to go, what the heck happened here? So let's talk about it in the lessons. Officers, make sure that you recognize a domestic violence call is the most dangerous call you're going to go on all day long, all shift long. Whenever you got that, it's going to be bad stuff, especially when you got a guy who's 6'11" who meets you at the door. So understand, you know, this is what these officers are doing, right? They're coming to try to just make sure everybody's okay, see if somebody needs some help, and if they have to step in and do anything, okay? So you notice here that the man of the house here is kind of trying to keep them at bay. He meets them at the front door. Who are you? What are you doing? Trying to keep them out of the house. And then Mike, he's going to get a little bit belligerent about them going into his house. But there's an exemption to the requirement for a warrant.
Yeah, he gets a little upset. Understand, like you said, these are dangerous calls. The reason they're dangerous, for the most part, is because you have high emotion and you're getting in between a man and his girlfriend or a woman or husband and wife. There is an exemption to the Fourth Amendment. If they have reasonable cause to believe there is someone in the home who is injured, dying, otherwise in distress, medical distress, they can go ahead and force entry to the house if they have to go check on that person. Now, that said, having been LAPD for as long as these guys probably have, they're a little bit probably, cops, hear me when I say this, I understand. You're tired of having to explain 1,000 times a week about the Fourth Amendment and how I can go in your house right now, and here's why. Plus, you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, someone's in there, maybe hurt. I got to get in there as fast as I can. This guy's giving you a hard time. So I think initially, if they just spent a couple more seconds just saying, look, I understand this is upsetting. I understand how you feel. I understand why you feel that way. But, however, comma, we can do what we're doing. We have legal justification to enter your home. And I would tell them, hey, down the road, if it turns out I'm wrong, you can sue me, sue my department if you want to. That's fine. But right now I have a job to do.
Right. And again, so just a little bit of explanation sometimes. And I get it. You're tired of explaining that, but they haven't only asked it one time.
Well, like you said,
they know.
Yeah, like you said earlier, this is your 438th time this year. This is their first time ever.
Right. So take a little time to explain. I understand why that would frustrate you, sir. Listen, I'm not in your house searching for stuff. I need to just verify that she's safe. So for my safety, for your safety, for her safety, I need you to stay out here while I contact her and make sure she's okay. And that little explanation might have avoided this whole thing. So that's part of that verbal de-escalation skills.
Right.
So now then, though, the officer has to kind of put a hand out and stop him there. And so now we're getting into a physical altercation where the guy, I mean, obviously this dude is 6'11" and he's advancing on an officer who looks like, he looks like a dwarf compared to this guy. Right. So they're going to try now to take him into custody. So they're going to start putting hands on him. No, you can't go inside. So now they're hands on. And I think he doesn't recognize at this point there's an investigation and he's being detained and investigated. And so, again, his friend grabs a hold of him. Don't touch him, whatever. Friend, as a private citizen, guys, never argue with a cop like this. What's going down here is you are never going to win a fight with a cop in this area. What I would do if you're frustrated with things, make sure the officer has his badge cam on, and if you want to pull out your cell phone and start recording, fine, but don't fight the cop.
You know, they say you can't outrun a radio, you know, on the road. Same thing here. You might win a fight with this cop and maybe the other one, but not the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 12th one. You just need to understand, if you feel like an officer, for our private citizens, if you feel like an officer is doing something wrong, document it. You're not going to win a legal fight, you know, at your front door or at a traffic stop or whatever. Document it, and if they're in the wrong, you do everything in your power to make sure that that's rectified. But
let the lawyers fight it out.
It's not going to happen right there in the moment.
Yep, let the lawyers fight it out. Again, it's perfectly acceptable for you to ask, officer, would you turn your badge cam on, please, so that it captures the audio? Or if the officer won't and says no, well, then that's why you have a smartphone, and you can record those things, and it's perfectly acceptable for you to do, but don't fight the cops. This is how you end up in cuffs. This is how you end up getting hurt. Now you see him here trying to hook this guy up, and as we change the perspective, you notice here he just forearm shoved this officer and then busted him into the wall. So now really all bets are off. He has assaulted a police officer at this point. This is clearly, you know, again, unjustified to do, and so the officers are absolutely going to respond. This big, you know, again, 6'11" dude is wailing on an officer. What do you expect him to do?
Not to mention, you know, at this point, you're like, what exactly is going on inside that he's this adamant about us not going in?
At a domestic violence call, no less, right? So you expect the officers to do that. And I think up to this point, the officers have been perfectly fine in their conduct. Again, maybe a little bit more explanation would have been okay. But, you know, you shove an officer into the wall like that, you're going to jail with 100%. So friends, as a private citizen, stop this. Don't do this. This is a bad idea because that was wrong on his part. And he earned what, you know, going to jail over that. And they're going to have to work to get him into custody. Now, let's talk about a couple of things in their physical skill sets. I've said this before, I say it again, they get him down on the ground, okay, fine. Let's talk about some of their uses of tools and techniques here. So I get it, they're trying to get him to stop resisting, and one officer has the taser out here. Now, I will say if he has removed the cartridge from this and he's using this merely as a pain compliance device, I'm okay with it. But I think shooting somebody with the barbs at this close is not going to do any good.
Well, I mean, you're not going to get enough spread. It's probably going to over-penetrate and just cause more actual physical damage than you'd want. It's just, yeah, I couldn't tell if he had the cartridge on there or not, but I think I see a wire, so yeah, probably a little distance would be good, but the problem is distance, he risks hitting his partner.
Risks hitting his partner, those kinds of things. So may not have been the best tool here. May have been better off just to go hands-on in this particular case. Now, again, they're trying to get him into custody. Couple things. Notice the officer here, where you see on the left-hand side, he has his left hand on this man's neck and is pushing his head. I am perfectly okay with this technique. This is actually a very good technique because when you turn somebody's head, it makes them less strong and makes them more likely to comply.
Where the head goes, the body will follow.
And so at this point, I got no problems with what's going on. I don't think he's crushing his windpipe or anything like that. I think he's using that to try to push his head, and that's a good thing. But then what we see here is a pretty significant challenge, because you're going to watch this officer try to get him into a place where he can manipulate him a little more, and now he puts his knee on this guy's neck. And in the year of our Lord 2021, this is not an acceptable behavior. This is considered the use of deadly force.
You can't do this. I mean, part of the problem is he's on his side. He's not on his front or back, so it's a really weird positioning. But guys, you gotta keep the knee away from the neck. Shoulders, fine. Elbows, fine. Neck, not okay.
Yeah, if you're going to put, again, if you're going to put your shin on someone's shoulder, shin to shoulder is actually a very good technique to keep somebody pinned in place. They're not going to move when you've done that. Knee on neck, I think that this is going to reflect very poorly on this officer. It's going to reflect poorly on the LAPD, and he could very well face disciplinary action and even charges for this. And so you've got to work this kind of technique completely out of your repertoire. In particular, what we heard on the badge cam is, of course, he sticks his knee on the guy's neck, and then very quickly the guy says, "I can't breathe." And of course, we've had a whole national discourse about this for years. Please, officers, hear me. You've got to remove this technique. And if you see this happening among one of your fellow officers in the moment, you have to take the action to push this guy off him in order to keep him from going to prison.
Going back to the George Floyd case, I remember watching the video, and I'm looking at his partners and I'm screaming to myself, why aren't you intervening? Why aren't you go get this guy off of this guy and you take over? He's obviously out of control.
Yeah.
8 minutes or however long it was. You as a partner, If he'd left it on there any longer, I would expect one of his partners would have said something.
Sure, but it was a few seconds, so we're just going to speed this up for the sake of time. He was on his neck like that for, I think but somewhere between 8 and 10 seconds is how long it was, then he got him up. I would argue as well and say that for my law enforcement friends, I think a year of jiu-jitsu would do most cops very, very well. Because the defensive tactics training that you get is great, but it's insufficient in and of itself. So having just a year under your belt of rolling with people who don't want you to submit them, and being able to do that will help you on the streets to do these kinds of things. And I think that's valuable training.
Agreed. Yeah. I think jiu-jitsu should be, if not taught at the academy, basics at least, that yeah, go invest. There's usually some military or ex-cop or current cop somewhere to give you a discount. Go take that training. It's invaluable.
And listen, I'm not, just shilling for jiu-jitsu. If you want to do catch wrestling instead, or you want to do sambo, some kind of grappling training, even, again, Greco-Roman wrestling, something like that where you're having to deal with resistant people. Now, I do think they finally get him into custody here, and I think at the end of things, they did a fine job here of them not leaving him on his belly, of getting him sat up, of getting him put down into a spot once he wasn't combative anymore, because again, this is a domestic violence call that they are at. So the two big lessons for all my law enforcement out of this: number one, maybe just a little time of explanation can keep you out of a fight, and a little bit of that verbal judo and de-escalation skills is important. Number two, please hear me, you have to remove that knee from the neck. It has to go away. We have to do better than this. This is not an approved technique because it now rises to the level of deadly force. Don't do it. And listen, when you do those kinds of things, particularly when you do it on a guy who is an NBA player, obviously very high profile, you are going to face really strict scrutiny doing that, and I would not recommend it. So let's learn the lessons as we try to do our jobs.